What is it about stuff that goes bump in the night that frightens and fascinates us? To some, the answer could be the mystery of the unknown. To others, it could be that monsters really do exist and are hiding in wait in the darkest recesses of our world. And then there are people out there, myself included, that want to see some scary shit happen where men die, women cry, and their children get taken away to become the very same monster the rest of the world fears. Sadly, if monsters really do exist, then they're doing a damn good job at hiding from the rest of us. And there's really only one place in the world that we can all agree that monsters can exist on the regular. And unfortunately, they're apparently getting their shit kicked in by the crazy bastards that are the Australians. But fear not, as there are plenty of spooky things to go around in the digital world, like movies, creepypastas, or in the case of this channel, video games. So pull up a blanket, take a sip from the drink of your choice, and get out your Irma comics, because we are diving into my pick for 7 spooks in video games. To make up for the honorable mention in the previous countdown, I'm happy to announce that our first spook in this countdown is brought to you by the wonderful moaning corpses in the Legend of Zelda series known as the ReDeads. You'll find these ghastly corpses mostly throughout the 3D Zelda games, with the occasional 2D Zelda appearance. You'll first encounter these guys in the Ocarina of Time when exploring the royal family tomb. And just a side note, the ReDead descriptions in the Smash Bros. Games say that the ReDeads are not reanimated dead bodies, but monsters made from clay. To that I say, fuck you and the pony you rode into town on, because the Smash Bros. Games are not canon to the main series, and these spooky motherfuckers are found in places where dead people are located. Saying the ReDeads are not reanimated bodies is like J.K. Rowling coming out and telling everyone that Link is romantically interested in Dampé the Gravekeeper or something. Anyway, in most cases a ReDead is stationary until Link gets too close, where it will then let out a bone-chilling scream that freezes the hero in place. The ReDead will shamble up to Link, where it will then proceed to fondle his face for a period of time before letting go. Well, unless it's the ReDead Knight from Twilight Princess. In that case, those bastards try to hit Link with a big fuck you sword. ReDeads are naturally spooky because they are almost always found in places underground or in areas where you would find a body. Usually a body of the murdered variety. Though one of the spookiest ReDeads comes to us from the Wind Waker and its Earth Temple. Coffins are everywhere in this place, it's dark as shit, and the ReDeads in general are just unnerving. These ReDeads are radically different in design, looking way more tribal than the traditional dead guy. Their large, sightless eyes will lock onto Link's location should he get close. And if he gets any closer, their red pupils become visible and they let out the creepiest scream out of any of the ReDeads in any of the Zelda games. What's worse is that sometimes you can find a ReDead in the Wind Waker in an odd location where you wouldn't expect them to be, like under the cabana at the private oasis. That was definitely a panic moment during my first playthrough. Thankfully, the ReDead is a slow enemy that can be easily defeated, especially with light, fire, and quick sword Wait, is that ReDead eating that ReDead body? I think I'm gonna go now. Our next spook comes to us from the colorful game series of Mario. I think we all know which spook we're looking at next, but before I announce it, it needs to be noted that the Mario series is all bright, colorful, and frankly, just really happy. Drunk Me absolutely loves this sort of shit because it's a conga line of shininess that leaves me well distracted. Sober Me, however, thinks this series as a whole is way too happy and needs a little dark and grittiness to it. Thankfully, in many of the Mario games, that dark and grittiness comes to me in the form of the ghost houses and our next spook, the Boos. These guys are, well, ghosts. Often floating around and either being an obstacle or goofy as shit, many of their iterations depict them as shy if they are looked at directly. When your back is turned, they will start coming in for the attack. The cheap little shits. All in all though, they look relatively friendly despite their ghostly shenanigans and sharp teeth. They're often found in the usual haunted houses, or in the case of Super Mario 64, a cage containing a haunted house. In Super Mario Bros. 3 though, these fuckers just look downright malicious. Maybe it's just the retro graphics, but these bastards look like they're either gonna suck your blood like a vampire, or start clapping some cheeks. There's not much else that can really be said about booze. Yet since their inception, these spooky specters have all had constant rape faces that get steadily closer every time your back is turned. If you were to put a game developed by Rare in front of me, 9 times out of 10 I would expect to see a lighthearted adventure without too many spooky elements. If you were to put Conker's Bad Fur Day in front of me, the lowbrow adult humor would make it so I never took the game seriously at all. That is until a bit later in the game where shit starts to get both real and honestly, a bit horrific. This is the same game that cut a scene where enemy characters were operating on someone while he was still alive. This game is fucking hardcore. As a result, this game isn't just a punch in the dick when it comes to horrific scenarios laced with humor, but it's also a game that dedicates an entire chapter filled with horror tropes literally called the Spooky Chapter, an entry that is just perfect for this topic today. It starts with a brilliant setup where Greg the Grim Reaper outfits Conker with a shotgun and tells him to kill some zombies while he makes his way to claim an inheritance. It's not so simple though, because there are hordes of zombies that Conker needs to cut through, and for an N64 title, this shit is gruesome. Everything about these zombies are just unsettling. From the way they shamble, to the way they moan, to them just being fucking everywhere. Especially in places where you don't want them to be. And it doesn't stop there. Because then the story leads Conker to finding a relative that is quite obviously a vampire, and before you know it, you're throwing villagers into a grinder to feed said relative until he gets too fat to support himself and falls into the grinder as well. Everything about this chapter is pretty spooky with a dash of gore and... fucking hell, where do all these zombies keep coming from?
Finally. Oh yeah, I forgot about those guys.
What do you think is spookier than a government conspiracy theory? First and foremost, we in the real world do have governments that have shady secrets, some even spooky. But if you are a government conspiracy theorist, then I invite you to come over to my place so that I may bash your head in with a bottle of brandy. That being said though, what's spookier than a bullshit government conspiracy theory is a bullshit government conspiracy theory that also happens to be true. That's where SCPs come in. SCPs and the SCP Foundation stand for Secure, Contain, Protect. The organization works internationally with the governments from other countries to locate and contain anomalous objects that have strange properties, most of which will kill you. These SCPs are assigned a number and have special containment procedures to ensure that they don't break free. And the spookiest one for me is also the first one you encounter, SCP-173. SCP-173 is a vaguely humanoid statue covered in blood and feces. So it's gross as hell too. Lovely. This thing can move rapidly when there's no direct line of sight on it, and the mere act of blinking can get your fucking neck snapped. I'm not joking, that's what this thing does. It's a neck snapping enthusiast. And instead of nuking the damn thing, the SCP Foundation wants to perform tests on it in a facility where other eldritch horrors are contained and ruin life for the Class D personnel. This is a combination of tempting the limits of both Murphy's Law and poking the metaphorical bear. Actually, scratch that last part, you're teabagging the goddamn bear. Predictably, there is a containment breach and now you have to find your way out of the facility while being chased by SCP-173. Your character, much like the real you, can't go for long without blinking. So if 173 is in the vicinity, your eyes are not only on him, but the clock is also ticking until you have to blink again, and then that bastard will move much closer to you. The worst thing about 173 isn't just the fact that it's attention grabbing, literally, it's what you don't see as well. While your eyes are on this statue, another SCP may just roll up behind you and kill you all the same. Nowhere is safe in this building, and the on-site nuke really should have been detonated even without the breach.
You know too much to let them get you. You're coming with us.
We can all agree that zombies are pretty horrific. Overused to the nth degree, but horrific. Having no life, but still living just to feed on survivors is about as horrible as you can get. But if you're being forced to kill against your will and can feel every waking bit of it, now that's some good horror right there. Now if you've played Dead Space before, there's an entry in the series where one of the main characters becomes a necromorph and you can see through his eyes as he hunts down another survivor, suggesting he's seeing these actions. The general knowledge of being able to see and feel but not control yourself is a pretty damn terrifying concept. If you're having trouble imagining this, then compare it to that feeling when you're lying in bed and suddenly your body feels like it's in freefall. Now imagine that something broke into your skull and is controlling you like a puppet while you're still alive and all you can do is scream. That's where the head crabs from HalfLife come in. These little bastards are nightmare fuel just by visuals, but when you begin to break down the how, you start to realize that these things are far worse than they appear. I'll give you the over-under on these guys, but if you want a biologist's opinion on the head crab, I highly recommend checking out Roanoke Gaming's take on them. There are 3 types of head crabs, 4 if you count the gonarch, and while the main 3 have their own unique properties, they pretty much have the same MO. They latch onto a humanoid host's head and use their legs to stay attached to their victim. From the hole in their underbelly, they engulf the head of the victim where a hidden beak breaks open the skull to manipulate the brain directly like some sick marionette. The host remains alive during this process and they are unable to control movement from the neck down. All the victim can do is scream in agony while they have no control over their motor functions and their bodies slowly decay until they are more like a shambling corpse. A horrible fate for sure, brought on by the creative child from a company that can't count to the number 3. Ever hear about feral children? It's pretty sad and fucked up. These are children literally raised by nature. They're more animal-like than human due to absolutely no social interaction with their fellow humans. Social isolation has detrimental effects on adult humans, such as being put in isolation while in prison. We'll be okay in the short run, but as the days tick by, we begin to lose ourselves. Now imagine a child going through something similar and you'll get something along the lines of the Huntress from Dead by Daylight. Anna, the girl who would later become the Huntress, lived with her mother in the harsh wilderness away from any human habitation. You can already see that we have a recipe for disaster brewing. Young Anna was trained to survive and hunt in the wilderness for food, but there came a day where her mother was killed during a confrontation with an elk. Now on her own, Anna has no one outside of her now dead mother for guidance and support, and unlike most other feral kids out there, Anna doesn't view the wildlife as a source of interaction. She views most wildlife as either food or potential food to survive. As she grew up, she escalated the size of her kills, going from small game such as squirrels to foxes and then eventually to humans when they unfortunately stumbled upon her territory. The Huntress kills using an axe and throwable hatches, sparing no one except for any little girls she comes across. And this is where the Huntress goes from fucked up to sad and then back to fucked up. She'll take these young girls back to her cabin and keep them there where they will either die from the elements or starvation. This naturally caused the Huntress to become mad with grief, and she would continue the cycle, going as far as to raid entire villages, take the girls, and kill everyone else. All the Huntress is, well, a lonely little girl who only knows how to hunt and kill. War eventually came through the forest and the villages were abandoned. As a result, the Huntress focused her attention to the soldiers, and by the time war had faded into obscurity, she vanished along with it. Nowadays, you could catch the Huntress going around her woods and throwing victims on the hooks to appease the entity. But if I were you, I'd stay the hell away from these woods. For our last entry, I want to take a bit of a sidebar and talk about Native Americans for a moment. The tribes have some excellent stories on life and morality, but they also have some scary shit too, like nightmarishly scary shit. One particular story comes to us from the Algonquin tribes. It's a creature that's made its way into pop culture media, become a namesake for a mental illness, and it's associated with winter, famine, and starvation. And while depictions of this creature by the tribes suggest something that is or was human, I much prefer the version that's akin to a decaying monster. For our final spook, we're looking at the Wendigos from Until Dawn. These monsters are the main antagonists of the game, and they function largely similar to their mythological counterparts. They're spirits that possess individuals and turn them into cannibals before warping their physical appearance. Instead of a bipedal gait that is suggested by the mythological version, the game's version of the Wendigo is more like a hunchback with a quadrupedal gait. In fact, the movement of these fuckers are a lot like jumping spiders of all things, which frankly makes them even more unsettling. In the prologue to Until Dawn, the twins Hannah and Beth disappear when they are unknowingly beset upon by a Wendigo that was trying to make them its next meal. This particular Wendigo is killed by the stranger during the chase, but it's not enough to save Hannah and Beth from the fall they take shortly after. Both are presumed dead, but later on it's revealed that Hannah survived and began to fall under the Wendigo's influence. After weeks of starvation, Hannah is forced to cannibalize Beth's body, allowing the Wendigo's curse to fully take her. The final third of the game is spent with the survivors trying to escape several of these ghouls, with the Hannah Wendigo at the lead. Since the Wendigo's vision is based on movement, the climax of the game is spent in tense, near silence as the Hannah Wendigo searches for survivors. If she finds anyone throughout her search, she will kill them in various and gory ways. In the end, a gas leak in the home is sparked that causes everything inside to go up in a ball of flames. With the Wendigos destroyed, their spirits rise from the fire to possess the next unfortunate soul to start the cycle again.
Destroy. Over.
So that was my list for 7 spooks in video games. I would like to know what was something that scared the hell out of you in a game before. As always, leave a comment down below with your picks, and of course, if there is a topic you think would make for a good countdown, let me know as well. I'm trying to get back into making longer videos after a long bout of both burnout and writer's block, but I'm going to work on a new method of scripting and editing. With any luck, it'll help me get my groove back. Until then, thank you all for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Take care, people.